Hey there, IT 145 students. My name is Matt Parker, and I'd like to welcome you to our class. So in this recording, I'm going to go through some details about myself, about the class, and how to be successful in our class. So first thing, if you go to the Brightspace, you'll see the announcements. So I have lots of different announcements already posted for you. First thing is if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, because the instructor one's always going to be time-stamped from way long time ago, you'll see the details about me. I do have my email address for Southern New Hampshire posted there. And then I do utilize Skype for synchronous communications. So um, I know that Teams might be available, but I've never been successful with getting Teams to work with Southern New Hampshire. So I always utilize Skype. It works every single time. We'll host virtual sessions on there. If you ever need one-on-one help with me, we'll use Skype to do that. Best way to do that on your own machine is to just download Skype rather than going through the web application. I do have my LinkedIn there, and then if you're interested in my GitHub or Bitbucket, I have some things on there. I don't use these very much, but I do have some stuff out there on those. I am on Eastern Daylight Time. I am in Fort Wayne, Indiana. It's in the northeast corner of the state. So if you're on Eastern Time or Central Time, you and I will sync up pretty well. If you're on a different time zone, if you're on the West Coast, then obviously you're going to be about 3 hours behind. I'm typically available Mondays and Wednesdays after 5 p.m. I do teach a synchronous course Tuesdays and Thursdays, so I'm not guaranteed available on those days. And then on the weekends, I'm available almost anytime. Keep in mind, if you send me an email, you're going to get a response very, very quickly. It will never be more than a day. In fact, if you send it during the day, you're going to get a response typically within an hour or two. So, a little bit about me. My journey to computer science was a little bit untraditional, maybe like some of you. I was actually a high school math teacher for 15 years. And in my second to last year, I decided to learn computer science mainly to teach it at the high school level. In the process of doing that, I was connected with the teaching faculty at Purdue University, Fort Wayne, where they offered me a full-time teaching job. So I left the high school in 2014 and taught computer science and information systems full-time as a lecturer at Purdue, Fort Wayne. In 2018, I actually decided to completely change careers and became a software engineer. So I'm hoping to bring a little bit of insight to your learning as I am actively working in industry. I'm currently a senior software developer with Booz Allen Hamilton. I'm on a project for the Veterans Administration, modernizing some of their systems. Just so you know, we are using Java on the project that I'm on, and in most of the positions I've held, I've used Java extensively. Prior to my time at Booz Allen, I worked at Raytheon Technologies. I was on the Patriot missile system, an artillery project, Zumwalt, it's a Navy destroyer, and then some other small projects along the way. And again, most of those did use Java. On the side, I do create software for distance runners under the name Easy VO2 Training. I do have an Android app that I've published to the Play Store. Um, I've got a website, I've got a Spring Boot REST API, a desktop app, and a web app, and always kind of tinkering. I use those things to learn and practice and try new stuff. So my credentials, I do have a degree in math education from Indiana State University, go Trees. Again, my first career was as a teacher, so you'll also see that I've got an MED that I did along the way. And then as part of my second career, I have a second master's degree in information assurance management, with the majority of that doing things like computer security, web security, so a lot of security type things, but I also have concentration in software engineering. So this is an important course in your computer science coursework. We are going to be using Java to develop functional programs. Along the way, you're going to be performing object-oriented programming. So in the intro Python course, you might have dabbled a little bit with objects. Here, we're going to get going with objects from the get-go. As you move through the computer science courses, all the programming, it is going to be expected that you can do object-oriented programming. So make sure that you focus on learning these skills. We are going to be using Eclipse, so no other IDE. We're only going to be using Eclipse, so don't ask if you can do it in IntelliJ or VS Code. It doesn't matter. We are using Eclipse. And there are separate recordings that are posted in the Module 1 announcements on how to use Eclipse. Uh, I'm assuming that most of you have had at least one Southern New Hampshire University course before. If not, that's okay. But we are using Zybooks for the textbook. You also perform participation activities and lab assignments in there. You do have to access the Zybooks through the Brightspace link within our course. If you try to access it externally, it's probably not going to save things. So make sure that you access it through our Brightspace. For Eclipse, the preferred usage is installing on your own machine. Again, I have recordings posted in the Module 1 announcements on the YouTube. In fact, just real quick. So our course will have a YouTube playlist. It'll be linked in the Module 1. You can say I've only got the first recording up, but they will grow as the term goes along. Um, So look in the announcements for that. And again, the preferred usage is installing on your own machine. I tried to get the Aporto virtual desktop up and running earlier today, and it kind of just hung, it didn't do anything, closed it, restarted it, and it did take 4 or 5 minutes. I know from terms previously that students have told me that the Aporto, especially on due date days like Sunday nights, is very slow. So again, I would recommend that you just install on your own machine. As I mentioned with the YouTube, I will post at least one recording each module. In the recordings, I'm going to highlight the course content as well as giving you hints and help to complete the labs, assignments, and projects. I'm going to give you my take on what things are. And again, keep in mind, I am in industry, so you're going to want to kind of get some of the ideas that I have to share. You've got questions. So I find computer science students, software engineers are very reluctant to seek help. What I want you to do is give things a good hour of effort. If you can't make any progress after an hour, then seek help. So things that you can do, you can ask questions in the general questions discussion forum on a Brightspace. You can seek out Southern New Hampshire's 24/7 online tutoring, or you can contact with me as well. If you have questions of a personal nature, do not put those in the general discussion forum. So things like online accessibility center modifications, grading, feedback, late work, etc. Don't post those in the general discussion board. Send me an email. And again, as mentioned earlier, for virtual tag ups, I do utilize Skype. It's got a screen share feature. It's really great that we can troubleshoot issues that you might be having. Announcements, you can expect a weekly announcement at the start of each module. So every Monday, we'll have some details on what we're going to be learning, what the due dates are, and so forth. And then I also will post announcements anytime a troubling topic or issue needs to be addressed for the whole class. So make sure you're checking the announcements. That is my number one way that I get to communicate with you. For the course decorum, please feel comfortable addressing me as Matt or MP. You don't need to call me Professor Parker or some other formal greeting. And similarly, in your introductory post, let us know if there is a different name that you like to go by. Outside of work and teaching, I do consider myself a normal person. I used to be an avid runner, but I have transitioned into cycling much more this year. Uh, Running just makes my back hurt. So I've been running very much. Uh, and I also play a lot of golf. Of these activities, I've met some of my bucket list goals. So I ran the Boston Marathon many years ago. I was a high school and collegiate runner, so I've kind of done all the running type things that I ever wanted to do. I did break 80 on a regulation golf course a couple years ago. And then just recently, I've been training for a long ride across Indiana. It's 160 miles in one day. So I just completed my first century not too long ago. I do have three great kids. They're 21, 19, and 12. And I do have a couple cats. On occasion, you might see them trickle into the background of some of my recordings as I make those. Okay, so that's a little bit about me. So let's talk about things about our course. So again, these announcements are all posted in the course announcements. All assignments, projects are going to need to be the zipped folder containing all project files. and it's got to be from Eclipse. You can't submit something from another IDEA. No IntelliJ, VS Code, etc. I know that some of you use those things, but for consistency, we are all going to use Eclipse. And again, I am asking for the zipped folder that contains all project files. That is going to differ from some of the assignments. Some of the assignments may say to just submit one .java file. We're not going to do that. You're going to submit the entire zipped project folder each and every time. Cheating and plagiarism. Please do not cheat on your assignments. I will catch you. If you find code that's on Chegg, Course Hero, GitHub, Discord, Reddit, etc., 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 and submitting that, it is a violation of Southern New Hampshire's academic integrity policy. If we have any writing assignments, there are some times where you might have to provide some in-text citations. Do the right thing and provide your own original work. Again, I do not want you going to Course Hero, any of these other sites to just try to submit work. For coding projects, I'm going to give you a template you can follow. My past students have found the templates to be of great value because you get to see how somebody in industry would want you to structure something. Last thing about my soapbox here, using an outside source is only going to hurt your own education. You're not going to learn what you need to know. Trust me, I've taught CS210, the C++ class. I've taught the mobile development course. If you don't have the Java skills, if you don't have the programming skills, it's eventually going to result in either a poor performance in a future course, or you're not going to be able to answer basic questions in a job interview. And that's the goal that you need to have. You want to get a job eventually. So if you find yourself struggling to complete an assignment by the due date, keep in mind you can still turn it in with a week. You might get the 10% late penalty, but it's better to do that than to submit something that you know isn't yours, get caught, and get a score of 0. And when I catch you, there is no resubmission. So don't cheat. Use the resources that are in Zybooks. Contact me. Use my resources. Just do not at all submit something you find on these sites. I do have the schedule of Zybooks. It's a 1-to-1. We follow chapter 1, module 1, and so forth. So you can kind of take a look at the structure of what we'll be studying. Next on the list is the code guidelines announcement. So every submission will have an industry standards. These are the industry standards you're going to adhere to. So if you have non-class identifiers, things like variables, methods, they're always going to be camel cased. Number of students, get maximum values as an example. Classes are always going to be Pascal case, so they start with capital letters for each new word. Your identifier should always be indicative of usage. Simple, simple, simple. Any method that you write should be commented using a Java doc block as you see here. So Java doc starts with /2 asterisks, and if you press the enter key while you're doing this in Eclipse, it should provide for you if there's any parameters or if there's a return value or any throwing exceptions, it should provide those in that Java doc block. And so what we want is a description of the method. What does it do? If there are any parameters, you need to provide a description for each of them. So if I have 3 parameters, I'd have 3 @param statements here. If it returns a value, I'd have a single return statement. So keep in mind, anything that's a method should always be commented with this right here. I am one that the code should speak for itself. I'm not big into you commenting every single line of code. If it's tricky, if it's unusual, if it's some kind of calculation, comment it. But if you're just declaring variables, do not put a comment saying I'm declaring variables. Or if you're using system out println and you're printing output, I don't need you to say I'm printing output. The code will tell us what you're doing there. Always remove any kind of boilerplate comments like type your code here, declare variables here, anything that's going to be there. Commented out code, always remove it. And if there's any to-dos or fix-me's, those should always be removed as well. Don't perform calculations when displaying output. You should only display and concatenate variable values. So For instance, we might perform some kind of calculation, save it to a variable, and then in the printing statement, we're going to say something like the result is, and then what we get back right there. It will make it much easier to debug things if we don't perform calculations when displaying the output. We should be using constants for values that never change during runtime. So for instance, if you're printing out menu choices, you should use constants and they should always be capitalized, cap case. We never write loop conditions that don't have a way of terminating. So no writing something like while true or for with no tested conditions. The loop condition should always be modified within the body of the loop. Lastly, maintain white space throughout. So you should have a single line of white space before and after code blocks. So if you have a decision you're making, a method that got defined, a loop, etc., always have some kind of white space before and after it. And then indentation needs to be maintained throughout. Again, you're using Eclipse. It's an IDE that will handle this for you. Doing these things right here makes your code readable and easy to follow. Okay, the other thing that's on here, I'm just going to show it to you here, is the object-oriented design guidelines. So we'll talk about these things more in chapter 2, but there are also object-oriented design guidelines. The biggest of is right here. We want to encapsulate data and provide methods that work with it. So that means you're never going to perform system out, println, or scanner in, or any input or output operations in the data encapsulation class. If you are only creating one of those instances, it's more like a manager performing actions, then that is not object-oriented programming. So again, we'll talk more about this as we get to week 2, but keep in mind, we do also have object-oriented design guidelines here. Okay, so that is all of the course announcements prior to us starting. If you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out and get them answered. All right, I'll talk to you next time.